Before we begin this segment of It's Rainmaking Time, I want to invite you all to a communications coaching module that I am doing next month and many, many months to come called Stewarding Communication. Stewarding communication has to do with the authority and the accountability you take so that when you communicate, you are aware of not just what you just communicated, but what you left behind in communication. It has to do with zeroing in on what it's going to take to be effective in communication so that you get what you want. And a lot of us communicate, but a lot of us don't get what we want. And there's a distinction between expressing something and getting what you want with communication. Most of us are going to have to present ourselves and what we want or our objectives our entire lives. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter, where you were born, how much money you have. Communication will be something of import your entire life. It doesn't go away just because you get older. We're living in a global information marketplace that's extremely competitive, extremely fickle, and most humans today have had their attention span robbed of them, their ability to focus stolen from an electronic medium that has captured them. So you have to understand that you're communicating to people that can't concentrate very well, that lose their ability to focus. Join me at Stewarding Communication. Go to rainmaking.com or rainmaking.ch, my company, and sign up for the communications module. See you there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. It's been so many years since we covered this subject of private email. I went to the Netherlands in 2017 and had the pleasure of meeting Alex van Eastern, who is the media representative at that time for StartPage and StartMail. And believe it or not, I haven't brought them on the show since 2017. But we had Catherine Albright on in 2010. And she is the author of a book called Spy Chips. She is the media representative for StartMail. She's back, and we're delighted to have her on the show. But before we begin with Catherine, I want you all to subscribe, to share the show with your friends, because privacy is more important than ever with the acceleration of AI, with the explosion of the spy agencies more and more proliferating. And we're not really sure, many of us who use either Proton Mail or StartMail or other types of supposed confidential email accounts, is it really private? And how do we know that the owners of the email companies can't get into our accounts? Is anything really private anymore? It's my pleasure to bring Catherine Albrecht back to It's Rainmaking Time. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Hi, Kim. It is so great to be back with you. I think it's been about 10 years since we last did this.
It's actually been longer.
Has it?
I think it's actually been longer, and time really has flown since Spy Chips came out. And StartPage was out, the search, another way to bypass Google. And I'm a StartMail user, and I trust you guys. But, most people, the trust is gone now with what's happened with the spy agencies. And I think it is the perfect time to have you back and talk to us about some of the updates that have happened both in the world, what we're facing, and also what StartMail is facing, being that you're in the Netherlands, you're part of the EU, and there's all kinds of things changing with free speech, the ability to communicate privately in the world. What do you have to say right now about any changes you'd like us to know about?
Yeah, StartMail, we founded it in 2013. And I was at the executive meeting when we cooked up the idea, when it hatched. We, of course, had Start Page, which was the private alternative search engine to Google, where people could, Google was everything you search for on Google, of course, they're putting into a giant database. So if you search for honeymoons in Hawaii, then the next, couple of months, everywhere you go, you're going to see information about hotels in Hawaii. So we created Startpage to stop that. And when Startpage was doing extremely well, we said, the other thing people really need is private email. So we created StartMail, which made encryption, PGP encryption, which is incredibly powerful and cannot be broken by the spy agencies or even supercomputers. We wanted to make it available for regular people so that everyone would have access to the same encryption that the NSA spy agencies and the technical elite and the computer scientists had access to. So we created StartMail in 2013 simply because philosophically we wanted to give people privacy. Now we fast forward, more than a decade later, and it's I think we were way ahead of our time, because the need for privacy in our online communications has never been greater. Um, the recent developments that I've been paying close attention to is the onslaught, the onrush of attacks from AI. AI has been sucking up essentially all of the world's data, all of our private, well, I don't know about private, but any picture you've posted on the internet, any information you've ever posted. And most disturbingly, recently, I was reading deep in Google's terms of services, and I came across a portion of Google's terms of service that essentially gives them permission to train AI on the contents of people's Gmail accounts. There is no reason to train AI on that other than to create dossiers of information on individual people, because AI already knows all the facts. AI already knows how to communicate like a person. AI already knows how to write email. AI does not need to train on how to write email. So the only reason that Google would be training AI on our email accounts would be to create individual dossiers. And, in the past, Kim, we were always able to say, well, sure, they could spy on me, but why would they? I mean, I'm just, I'm just a teacher. I'm just an accountant. Whatever. Why would they even care what I'm doing? I'm not worried about it. So I'll just use my Gmail account, knowing that nobody's really going to look at me. The problem is that AI has limitless, boundless attention. AI can look at everything all the time, and it's not like a person where you've got to focus your attention on, really what matters. AI can suck up all of that data, and when the day comes that we have to stand up, and I believe the day will come when we have to stand up and
I think
take a
it's here.
stand
I
against
think it's here.
AI, then Google is already going to know, how are we supposed to communicate if we're going to fight back against this thing if the very method of communication has already been compromised by the thing we're going to have to fight. So the I think the biggest advantage right now for StartMail, in addition to the encryption, all the privacy protections and everything that we baked in back in 2013 that have only gotten better, is that StartMail is the only email program that has promised never to give AI access to your email or to use it in any way. So if you're using other accounts, you're going to start seeing AI offering its assistance left and right at every turn. Well, that means that AI is deeply embedded in that product and in your use of it. So you will never see that on StartMail. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I came back to the company late last year, was my sort of my mission. I'm actually writing a book on artificial intelligence. I believe it is going to be the enemy of humanity, as do many of its creators. And I approached StartMail and said, which I had helped to found, but I, for health reasons and personal reasons, had to leave for a couple of years. But I said, let's work together and fight the big threat we face now, which is AI. And they said, absolutely, we will promise never to use it. Go out there and let people know that it's AI free.
I
So
want to go back
then,
to. I want to go
right,
back to one thing
yeah,
because we sorry to interrupt you, but we went. You talked about PGP. Most people don't know what PGP is. We'll go back to that later, but I want to say something about the Gmail accounts. It is. I have said for years when I'm running my company, the Rainmaking company at rainmaking.com, I will not sign any contracts with anybody using Gmail. In other words, I will not go into contract negotiation with anybody with Gmail, because that's like handing over everything you're doing that's of import to that company. That company, by the way, took off over 25 interviews I've done, by the way, Catherine, in the health area and more. And the last straw for me was when they took off my tribute to my dead doctor. After 30 minutes, they went back 10 years retroactively, removed my tribute to my doctor, gave me a strike, and removed it from the internet. And
Whoa.
so you have to know. I have evidence of all this. I even shared it in newsletters, et cetera. When it's at this level, when a company can go back retroactively, change its terms on a dime, okay, defile everything, all the user trust. But it's funny. I had like divine guidance many, many years ago about them, and I refused to sign contracts with people who were using Gmail and only Gmail. So you were ahead of your time. I was ahead of my time, not even knowing all the detail that you've described.
Well,
It's,
it's horrifying. Larry Page, of course, one of the guys, who founded Google. Larry Page and Elon Musk. Few people know this. There's a reason why OpenAI is called OpenAI. OpenAI is the creators of ChatGPT.
right.
The reason it's called OpenAI is, and Elon Musk tells this story, is he and Larry Page, who were friends at the time, were having a conversation, and Larry Page was boasting about his DeepMind AI that they were building. And at that time, Google was the primary company working on AI. And Elon said, aren't you a little worried that, that thing could become a little too powerful and be scary? And do you know what Larry Page said? He said, why would you oppose the species of AI? You're being speciesist.
I remember that. Oh, my
Yeah,
God. I
by
do remember
preferring
that.
human beings over this evolving species of artificial intelligence, which wants to be our overlords. So, in response, Elon Musk tells the story that he created, along with several other people, the OpenAI in order to have it be open source. So the idea was no longer would it be in a black box controlled by Larry Page and his buddies at
Right.
Google, but it would be open. And of course, we have seen Sam Altman completely turn that concept on its head. It's no longer open, it's no longer nonprofit, it is now a for profit, ruthless corporation. And everything has changed. But I think it's very interesting that essentially this AI revolution that we're experiencing really did emerge from Google. And that's not
Yes, indeed.
surprising because that's the mind of the planet. That's where all of the information of the planet flows through Google. Everything from our maps to our billions of email accounts flow through Google. It is that's where we go. Most people, if they're not using Start Page, that's where people are going to launch onto the internet and get their information. So they have
Hold
a
on one
tremendous
second. You
amount of
just got
power.
cut off. I don't know what happened, but
Oh,
your voice was cut off. Can you want to restate
okay.
that?
Am I
Yeah,
back?
restate that, please.
Yeah, so I was talking about Google being, it's not surprising that the artificial intelligence sort of mind has incorporated itself through Google because Google really is the source of all it is the channel through which all of the world's information flows. You've got billions of Gmail accounts. You've got it as the launch point for most people to get information. If you want a recipe for cooking asparagus, or if you want to know what year World War I ended, most people will go to Google to get that information. So they are the gatekeepers of the world's information.
Yes.
And it is not then surprising that Google would be the entity, the corporate entity that would bring into existence this universal mind, which would want to capture all of the information humanity knows and more. And that's why we see AI emerging from there. So we oppose Gmail, we oppose AI, and I'm frankly scared to death of both Google and AI.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that I think also the confluence of the relationship that AI has with Microsoft, that multi-billion-dollar deal means that you are in some type of a venture, a black box with Microsoft and OpenAI. And so, based on past history, you have to go like the way a company operates is the consciousness of the company. So, all you have to do is look at the behaviors and actions, and you kind of have the template. You have the blueprint of what you're going to be dealing with. To me, the terms and conditions by which they operate are the consciousness of the company. And so, some people will say, well, AI can help you organize things. And even though we're not really supposed to be in a conversation about AI, who can avoid it at this point? But it's very relevant when it comes to your emails. Can we go back to the PGP part? Because there's a history with PGP means pretty good privacy. And there's a history of who started it, how it started, and why it's so important that StartMail uses it. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, so PGP is kind of a misnomer, kind of tongue in cheek. Phil Zimmerman, its creator, a computer scientist and cryptographer, called it pretty good privacy. Nothing could be more of an
Right.
understatement than that. It is absolutely unbreakable privacy. It's a bit technical, but it's based on prime numbers. And the thing about prime numbers is it's pretty much impossible to tell what the really big ones are. If you get a big enough number, you've got to divide it by every other number in between. And so it's a combination of all sorts of prime number things that are frankly mathematically beyond my pay grade.
Mine
But
too.
PGP, yeah.
Right.
So PGP was created in 1991. It has now become the gold standard for scrambling information. So as a cryptographer, cryptographers make codes. We had cryptographers in the Second World War making codes for wartime. Well, Phil Zimmerman is in that same tradition. And he came up with the ultimate code, the ultimate scramble, which he called PGP, pretty good privacy. But if I'm going to send you a message, or maybe I'm just going to write a document and I want it to be top secret, then I can run it through an algorithm that will convert the plain text. Let's say it's the I don't know, the ingredients for Coca-Cola,
Okay.
right? That's a top
There you
secret.
go.
So let's say I have those ingredients in plain text in front of me in a Word file, or a text file, and I want to store them knowing that possibly my computer could be hacked into, someone could get that critically top secret information. So what I can do is I can run an algorithm on it that I don't have to really do much, but I just subject it to this PGP process, and what comes out on the other end is unintelligible to anyone. So instead of the Coca-Cola document being stored what we call in plain text, meaning anyone could read it, it's now stored as just a whole bunch of nonsense and gobbledygook. So, in order to turn the nonsense and gobbledygook back into plain text, you have to have what's called the PGP key. So, the key, every individual person has their own PGP key, and information scrambled with that key can only be opened with that key, and only that person has access to that key. So, what you can go online and you can find cryptographic websites, and you can get your own PGP key, and you can install the software to do this
Which is
yourself,
very
or you
complicated.
can take
Very
it
complicated.
is
You got to be somebody in the
and
know in that field to do it.
you have to know what you're doing exactly. And if you mess up, of course, then you're not secure anyway. So even if you think you figured it out, there's a lot of steps to it. So what we did in 2013 is we said, well, why don't we make this available for regular people so they can take their email that they're sending and receiving and put it into this format? So what StartMail does, each person with a StartMail account, that the entire account, every single email sent and received, everything in it is scrambled through PGP encryption. So if someone were to break into StartMail at gunpoint and get into all of the servers and all of the individual accounts, they would see nonsense and they could not make sense of it without the every single individual providing their individual PGP key. So Start Mail is encrypted on the server side. We do not host our servers on some cloud out there, some rented server in the cloud, which most or many companies
For
do.
sure.
We control our own servers that are physically in our control. We have a backup server which is also physically in our control that copies all of the encrypted information, so we can't read any of it. And not only is the account encrypted, so if someone were to break in or have a subpoena or a warrant or I don't know, spies or whoever got in there, they couldn't make sense of it. And the other thing we do is we enable users to encrypt the messages they send while they're in transit. So if you're on a Gmail account and someone breaks into the Gmail servers, or even Gmail chooses to look into the servers, they can absolutely see the contents of your email. And when that email is being sent, it is not being sent with what's called end-to-end PGP encryption, because the recipient of that email, well, first of all, Google doesn't make that available, but the recipient would have to have their own key to decrypt it. So it's a little bit tricky. Both people, I have to have, if I'm going to send you an email, I have to have my own PGP key to encrypt it, and I have to have your PGP key to encrypt it. So when you and I are communicating back and forth, actually, I just need yours to get it to you. But if I want to see it again, I need to have mine, right? What StartMail does is every person who has a StartMail account automatically behind the scenes receives a PGP key that they don't have to even think about. It just happens automatically. And so you have a StartMail account, I have a StartMail account. There is a button that I can click, or a little toggle switch that I can flip. And when I write to you or when you write to me, we can flip that toggle and that message becomes encrypted with the powerful PGP encryption. So not only can you do that between StartMail users with really no extra effort, but StartMail users can do that with other people. So I have a sister who doesn't use StartMail. I've been trying to convince her to do it, but it's sometimes
Families
hard
are the most
when people say,
resistant,
"Oh,
oddly, unless they're informed.
yeah, like who cares what I'm doing?"
Yeah, that and that
Of course, that's all changing, but
unfortunately, that logic is proving to be absurd because today, in today's, at least in the United States, I mean, you could disagree with something online. You could write to somebody else. That thing is extracted through AI, let's say through Google, et cetera, or Gmail. And before you know it, you're on a list somewhere. I mean, that's how
oh,
fast it can happen. It's not
it's
about, it's just like
crazy.
I ask people, why do you close your envelopes when you mail them? Why? Why do you do it? Just leave it.
Yeah, the analogy,
I
Kim,
mean,
that I use is that so privacy invasion is, it's not a victimless crime, but it's one where the victim doesn't know they're a victim. In the case of robbery, rape, carjacking, theft, murder, the victim knows they've been victimized. But in the case of surveillance, the victim does not know it until after the fact, or maybe they'll never know it, but they're being invaded and violated nevertheless. So I liken it to having a neighbor a block away who has some powerful binoculars, and if you're walking around after the shower in the buff with your curtains open and that neighbor is peering at you through their binoculars, you don't feel anything, you don't see anything, you don't notice anything, but you are absolutely being violated. Whose fault is that in that case? Well, first of all, it's the fault of the guy with the binoculars because he shouldn't be doing that in the first place. But also, why are you not closing your curtains?
right. I was just going to
Because
say that
if
one.
if you know there are people out there with binoculars, and when it comes to our email and our personal information, there most definitely are lots of very powerful entities with binoculars, then it just makes sense to close the curtains. And to continue using Gmail is just like walking around in the buff with all of your secrets hanging out, knowing that there's a guy with binoculars. You're fully aware he's over there, but because you can't feel him looking at you, you just think, oh well, and you forget about it. You try to pretend it's not even real. But people have really literally no excuse to continue to use these so-called free email products
It's amazing how
because
many
they're paying
people.
for them with their
It's
privacy.
amazing how many people are still using AOL, Yahoo. I mean, it is unbelievable that they're still in that realm because they don't understand what it is, really, and what's going on. I'd like to get to another part of this. I want you to share with the audience Mike Waltz, our national security advisor. What happened with him using Gmail? Not everybody knows.
Yeah, so last week, the Washington Post exposed the fact that Mike Waltz, again, our national security advisor, was using his old Gmail account, the one he had before he got appointed to that position. So he was given a private, top secret government email address and account that he can use, but he was choosing to continue to use Gmail. And I think of course, the big scandal is he was receiving calendar updates. They were talking about mission critical military actions. They were talking about weapon systems. And I think that Mike Waltz, just like everybody else who is using Gmail, said, oh, nobody's going to care. It's too hard for me to switch over my calendar and switch over all of my personal stuff to this government email. And who cares anyway? It's not like they're looking at me. Well, this, if you're the national security advisor, you better believe they're looking at you. AI has captured every
And not
single
just
one
AI,
of these
government
comments.
agencies ask Google for all kinds of favors. I mean, I consider Google the front end of the NSA. I do. I consider it the front end. I mean, the world has trusted them for what, 25 years or so,
It's
with
crazy.
all our information, and we innocently went there, and then YouTube was purchased, and we trusted YouTube. I mean, they went through my climate shows. I must have done 35 shows on climate and weather from the very beginning, from 2009, to lay out the whole progression of how the agenda was created. What is the real science of all these aspects? They absolutely put me on a list. I can tell you that right now. Because the
Yeah,
agenda is
and
global, and they just like they did with people on Twitter. They put them. I did a show on the Constitution, 2 hours with Dr. Edwin Vera called Calling in the Constitution. I literally witnessed the shadow banning of a 30-second spot over and over and over again on then Twitter in 2020. I was furious.
They've created this dichotomy. There's you, the civilian over here, and then there's this governmental establishment. And if you say anything against the governmental establishment, you are some kind of seditious individual, insurrectionary, or whatever it is, anti-government person. When they don't seem to realize that the real government of this country is not them, it's you. And they have besotted you with propaganda to prevent you from understanding this.
And these things are still in place.
yeah, they are, and the dependence that Americans have on these systems, the dependence. I think if Gmail were to go overtly evil tomorrow, what would people do? Maybe like Mike Waltz, they would just continue using it because it's too inconvenient to actually make a switch. One of the key, I talked to many people about Starmail since I've come back, and I've said, why are you continuing to do this? Why don't you switch? Oh, well, it would be too hard. It's not. You can put a mail forwarding. People can continue to write to your Gmail address and forward it on while you inform them of your new email address. You can import. We have a tool where you click a button and you can import all of your contacts. It's not a painstaking, horrific process, and I think someone with the federal government needed to tell that to Mike Waltz. Yeah, you take the time, take the 10 minutes it's going to take, and switch your email over to your federal government account. Stop putting it on Gmail, leaving it there.
The government still has obviously very old, antiquated systems and processes in place that's being either looked at, evaluated, reworked, or changed drastically. The EU has something called GDPR, very strict data privacy protections. Can you talk about that, and then talk about that relationship that the EU has with StartMail?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons why StartMail is extremely private, in addition to the PGP encryption and the fact that even if someone got a hold of your email, they couldn't do anything with it. And that is the fact that unlike the US, where it seems like all of these tech bros with Facebook and Peter Thiel and PayPal and
Whoever you're using, pretty
obviously
much.
Google, whoever, Twitter, X, Elon Musk, all of these guys are in so tight with the federal government that if Donald Trump were to say to Elon Musk, hey, I need some Twitter information, I seriously doubt that Elon Musk is going to say, absolutely not. No, because in the US, there are very lax regulations about when that information can be turned over. Especially, I'm going to pull it up in a minute, but anything that's over 18 months old is considered abandoned. I know they were trying to change that legislation, but essentially any email that you have that is over 18 months old, you don't even need to get a judge signing off on a warrant. You can get it with just a subpoena under US
Wow.
law. So it's truly scary when you realize how leaving all of our personal information on these servers out there where they can be obtained. Oh, and by the way, Kim, if they do that for your messages that are over 18 months old without a warrant, they do not have to tell you. So again, it's like the guy with the binoculars looking through your window.
I mean,
you don't even need to know it happened.
I'm-
They don't alert you.
I mean, we're
So
obviously living in a national security state, and we have been for quite a long time. And it just the power has exponentiated. I mean, even when Tucker Carlson was going to interview Putin, and those arrangements were being made through the Signal chat app, NSA got a hold of that, and here people were thinking that's all private. You know, I always say if you're using Signal, it's not that it's secured. It's just that it's more secured than less secured. Does that make sense?
well, things are only as secured as the people running the show. So the reason that they got caught up using um, the Signal thing where they brought in the Atlantic reporter and all of that happened. The reason they were using Signal is it's different from using Gmail. The government actually allows them to use Signal because it's encrypted texting.
Right.
And if you're texting through any other means, it's not encrypted. The government doesn't have encrypted texting. There is no product that the US government has provided to
Wow.
government officials. So they have to use
That's
Signal
a job for Phil
or
Zimmerman
Telegram.
now. That's something for
Tell
Phil
ya.
Zimmerman should get in there and provide it, because apparently with Pegasus and other software like it through DARPA or Mossad or whatever, you can get into anything, supposedly. Supposedly.
Yeah, so well, and I would love to see StartMail actually do that. If we can get enough people on StartMail to actually begin demanding, well, I don't know if demanding is the right word, but get a big enough crowd into the StartMail universe to warrant a texting app that is encrypted, then we could create our own version of something like Signal. And the other alternative is Telegram. I
Yeah.
actually
A lot of
use
people use
Telegram
it.
in my encrypted communications. Yeah. So Signal and Telegram are the two. And the scandal there was not so much that they were using Signal. The scandal there was that Signal actually made a mistake by pulling in someone's email. There was a recent explanation of that
Oh,
just
I
a
didn't
couple
hear
days
that.
ago.
Tell us. Share it with us.
Yeah, it's interesting. So the Atlantic reporter is hostile to the Trump
Right, I
administration.
heard
So
that.
clearly not a person you would want to add, but someone from within the Trump administration had messaged. Was it Pete Hegseth who did that? Right?
I don't
It
know
was
exactly who
I think
was responsible for doing it. It could have been him. I don't know who
yeah.
did it.
Well, so someone from within the administration had messaged and said, this Atlantic guy, we want you to talk to him because he's trying to attack Trump. And could you please just have a conversation with him? Here's his contact information. Well, what Signal did, and I'm pretty sure it must be its AI, because how else would it figure this out? Is it gave the user of Signal the option of adding in the contact information that was extracted from the message. So if you wrote to me, Kim, and at the bottom you said, Kim Greenhouse, here's my email, here's my website, here's my phone number, and we were communicating that through Signal, Signal might ask me, do you want to add Kim to your personal contacts? And I'd say, sure. And then it would pull in your email address and all of that other information and pop it into my Signal. What would happen in this case is
Jesus.
it asked, do you want to bring I think his name was Brian. Anyway, the Washington in the guy on his team. He said, "Do you want to bring that guy in?" And he said, "Yes, bring him in." Except the AI made a mistake, and instead of bringing in his contact information, it sucked in all of the contact information for the Atlantic reporter into the email and put it under the name the name of the guy who had texted him in the first place about this problematic Atlantic
Oh
guy.
my God.
So when he went to create the group, he added that guy to the group,
That's
but
wild.
unbeknownst to him, in Signal it had
It's a kerfuffle of
the Atlantic
galactic
guys.
proportion.
It's horrible. So, he got a lot of slack for saying, well, it just sucked it in. And people were like, these programs don't just suck things in. We're not living in the Matrix. Well, no, it did just suck it in.
But
so,
Signal has been very trusted. I would like to interview the woman who runs Signal. I think it would be very important for the public. Maybe she could also bring additional light to this. But what we know, right, is that things are more vulnerable than we think they are. I want to go back to the EU GDPR privacy protections.
Yes.
I want to bring us back there because the fact of the matter is that the EU has very draconian feelings and thoughts about communication and what should and shouldn't be controlled and what should and shouldn't be allowed. And yet, in this particular case, when it comes to email, there's strict privacy laws about it. So what is the big deal? What is the big deal about their privacy protections compared to the US, for example?
Well, so in the US, we essentially have a patchwork of 50 states having different privacy regulations. There is no one overarching US privacy law that all companies must adhere to. If you're an individual company like Google, that means that you have to adhere to all 50 of these, but none of them come close to offering the sort of blanket privacy protections that the GDPR offers in Europe. From our perspective, now this is important because from our perspective as StartMail, we operate under those very strict guidelines, which means we cannot go into people's emails. Well, we physically can't anyway. I want to talk about that in a minute, but we are restricted by law from going into people's emails or using them for marketing purposes in any way. In the US, it seems like the marketers can pretty much get access to whatever they want. I've been fighting that for 20 years. But StartMail operates under the very strict GDPR restrictions, and in addition, we operate under the restrictions of the Dutch legal authority. The bottom line of this is that we have been approached with warrants, with subpoenas, with requests for information on StartMail users. However, since our founding in 2013, we have never once turned over a single shred of readable email information or email text. And I say readable because if they insisted, well, we can hand them an encrypted file and they could take, thousands of years to decrypt it. I think it would make more sense rather than doing that to just wait 1,000 years till new technology comes out to decrypt it, which will be a long time coming. But we have never turned over any information in the clear. In contrast, Google has turned over Gmail left and right in response to subpoenas and warrants and not told the people that they were giving it to. So regardless of the protections that we have under European law, our protections are even stricter because there is, or even more secure because there's nothing we can turn over. We cannot give anything to anyone, and we never have because it just can't be done because of the encryption. And I was going to tell you how I know this. So I worked with the company from 2013 to 2017, and I had to leave due to, as I said, health and family reasons. I returned in 2024, and I still had my email address, my executive, we one of the very first ones when we all just could use our first names or, a couple letters. So I had this really great email address, and it had all of you were in there, for example, you and I texted back and forth or emailed back and forth between it. So all of my media contacts were in there. And I needed to access it because I wanted to just let everybody know, hey, I'm back. I'm doing this. So the reason you did not hear from me is because I said, well, just give me back my email account. And they said, well, do you remember your password? And I said, no, it's been a number of years. I forgot it. And I said, but surely, of course, I'm an executive with the company. Of course, you can get me into my own email. Can you not? And they said, Catherine, we built it this way on purpose so that we cannot. So even I, as one of the founders and senior executives of the company, was unable to get into my own email account, and they had to literally delete it, wipe it out, and start over again with a fresh new account with nothing in it to give me that email address back. So I can attest with certainty that the executives at StartMail are unable to get into an account without the participation of the account holder knowing their password and providing it. So it
That's a
is
very
encrypted.
important example. I remember forgetting my password and going to StartMail and saying the same thing, and they could not help me. And thank God I found it,
Mm-hmm.
because that would have been that. So I've been there. I want to ask you, I want to go back to something serious. With the draconian laws having to do with communication in general, okay? And many people feeling like you shouldn't be able to have free communication. There should be a third party reading our communication, anything that's written, what's allowed to be said and spoken and shared. Let us suppose the EU authorities did come into where StartMail is. Are they still in the same offices they were like 7 years ago? Are they in the same place? Okay.
Yes.
So they're near The
Yep.
Hague, too. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
so, and it's funny, when I was with Alex Van Eastern in in 2017, when I first interviewed him in 2010, after interviewing you, he was dealing then with Article 29, and the EU was about to end privacy in Europe. It was a big to-do then. But let us suppose now the authorities came to StartMail and said, we're sorry, we're just not going to have it. You're not going to block us as the government from being able to see what's happening. We're going to shut you down. Now what?
We would probably be shut down. There's a big fight going on right now between Apple and the British government over this. There have been numerous efforts because over the years by many governments, because governments do not like PGP. Governments want the ability to access everything at any time. They hate the idea that something could be happening that they could not get access to if they wanted to. So they have been working behind the scenes in country after country for year after year to either shut down PGP encryption and make it illegal to use, make it just military technology so regular people couldn't use it, or to demand behind the scenes a copy of every individual person's PGP key that's created in the country, so that if the time came that they wanted to decrypt something, they would just have that person's PGP key. All of the companies who are doing encryption have pushed back, and a recent, I think it was just this week, there was a debate going on in Britain where they did not want Apple to tell the public that they were trying to get these encryption keys. And there was, I'd have to pull it up, but there was a ruling essentially that said Apple could reveal that information. And so it has been now revealed that the British government has been trying to coerce Apple into providing its PGP encryption keys and give the government a back door into PGP encryption in Britain. So if that were to happen to us, I mean, one of the things I love about working with this company, I have worked with these folks for decades now.
Yeah.
if I I know Alex very well. Robert Beans, I consider a close friend. They're just wonderful people. Sally
God bless
Pays.
them.
That team is true blue, and they're the most honorable, wonderful people I know. I honestly can say that Robert, he's an airline pilot,
I
by
didn't
the
know
way. I don't know
that.
if you knew that, but yeah, he flies for
Oh
KLM.
my God.
So yeah, so this is kind of his I'm not sure if being an airline pilot is his side gig or running
I
Startmail is
hope
his
they're
side
running
gig, but
things
he's
better
just
with whatever planes they're using over on that end. God help them.
my
Yeah.
gosh, I know.
Hmm.
Well, but so they are just wonderful people, and it's been the same crew from the beginning. I trust them, I know them, I have seen their integrity on so many different areas and levels. And I can unequivocally say without any hesitation that Robert would shut it down before allowing any kind of a backdoor or any way lying to StartMail users. He just wouldn't do it.
Let me ask you something though. If God forbid he had to shut it down, would users be given at least time to get copies of their emails?
Absolutely.
Because I mean
Absolutely.
that is,
So
it's not like what happened with Kim.com. I mean, the government came in New Zealand and just took everybody's material, right? The story of Kim.com.
I hadn't heard
Okay,
that
well,
one. No.
Kim.com had mega upload, and people, it was kind of like another Dropbox. And
Okay.
I think either LA or New York, the music industry accused Mega Upload of violating copyright. And so they went in with some injunction, and everybody that had used their version of Dropbox lost all of their data, images,
Wow.
websites, everything that was stored on Mega Upload. It was a big deal. They went after him. They, raided his house, et cetera. I think he's quite ill right now. He's a young guy still. As a former hacker, I think, from Germany, and he's in New Zealand. But the point of the matter is, like I said, God forbid, users, I mean, would need to have some notice, because if you rely on it contractually and everything, there's no other way to protect your material. There isn't.
Yeah, so I think if we get to that point with StartMail, we're going to be in a world of other hurts. I think
Sure.
the whole world will be burning by the time that happens. All I can say in response to that, because I'm not a technical person, but our technical team is very skillful. We do have physical backups in a separate server that is separately located where everything is backed up. So
All right. That's great to hear.
all I can
Great
say
to
is
hear.
that StartMail would fight tooth and nail to preserve people's data. StartMail would fight tooth and nail to prevent anything from being turned over. And even if it was turned over, it would be encrypted and useless. And I cannot imagine a reason why the government would want to prevent people from getting access to their own email. But if we ever get to that point,
Well,
like I
look what's
said, we're going to
happening.
have
We wouldn't
many
have
other
imagined a
problems.
lot of things that are happening in the United States and England. I mean, if you're praying in
Tell
the
me
wrong
about
place in
it.
England, you can be put in jail. So
Tell me about it. It's
so I
awful.
have to ask, because we're in a different world of events and conditions. Um, are you aware that Phil Zimmerman, when he first came out with PGP, the NSA went after him and tried to put him in jail for 25 years because he wouldn't
No,
turn it
I'm not
over,
surprised though.
and he had a very good legal counsel out of New York, I think out of New York, who helped him, and he won that case. Otherwise, he would have been
My
in prison
gosh.
for 25 years.
That's
You didn't know
insane.
that.
And he is one of the
Yeah,
nicest, most unassuming, humble
yeah,
guys. He worked with us in the creation of StartMail, Alex, and he worked closely together to incorporate all of the insights that he had and his technology into
that's
StartMail.
great.
He has been just a wonderful friend and ally to StartMail and to people seeking privacy. And he is such a nice person. I cannot even imagine him being in jail for 25 years. By the way, I just pulled up a link here, a history of government attempts to compromise encryption and privacy. And it has just a huge number of historical attempts on the part of many governments to stop people from communicating privately, not just with PGP encryption,
Any kind.
but any kind, export restrictions on sending any kind of communications using cryptography overseas. I mean, from World War II to the Cold War, there have been efforts, and until PGP came along, I think that it might have been possible to compromise some of these things. The cool thing about PGP is it's literally not able to be compromised. I mean, it would take 1,000 supercomputers a million years to decrypt a
Well,
message. It's just not going to
the
happen.
thing is, though, that I think when Phil Zimmerman came up with it, and God bless him for doing it, he was so forward thinking. And I remember him being interviewed and being concerned about people being arrested for protesting. I mean, I don't mean violent protest, but I mean just speaking out. He was protecting free speech for people in other countries who were just picked up off the street and you never hear from them again. So he was very visionary from the very beginning. And that's what that creation was designed to protect. I mean, this is as old as the internet.
Yeah. And this is life or death stuff. I mean, you look at repressive regimes, you look at, Canadians even. I live right across the border from Canada here in Michigan. And I get a lot of Canadian news, and they are actually advising their citizens to wipe all of the electronic data off of their phones before attempting to cross the border, because there's a concern that U.S. border officials or U.S. Law enforcement officials will go through their phones, find something that they said, and use it as a reason to detain them or put them into, I don't know. It's happened to a number of people
It's
crossing
really
the border
sad. I mean,
here that they have been
I have
detained.
friends who live in Iran and Turkey and other places where they literally shut the internet down during certain times. In other words, you can't even
Yeah,
get a message
they,
into the country and they can't get a message out of the country. And this is a political weapon that's used by dictatorships and authoritarian regimes. And it happens all the time. So I think it would.
well, they learned that early on because, when the government was going out and shooting people during the Arab Spring, the uprisings and such, people had their phones out. I think the government was not with the program. They did not realize that people were connected and could broadcast in real time the atrocities that were happening. And so, in response to that, they have now taken to shutting down the internet before engaging in atrocities. So, phones are still, people should be aware of this. You do not need the internet to use your phone to film. You can still film and smuggle your phone away from the scene of the crime and upload it later. But it does prevent any kind of real time awareness from happening when there are government atrocities in these repressive regimes. And there, something like PGP is a matter of life and death. Something like Signal or Telegram, encrypted messaging, something like StartMail, encrypted emailing, these things are incredibly important because the government is monitoring all communication. So people should absolutely not be using anything other than encrypted technologies, but not just there. I mean, really everywhere. And again, it's like, the guy has the binoculars. It's just a question of at what point is he going to cross the street and break in your house because of what he's seen through the
It's the
binoculars.
number of agencies. Look what happened to the owner of Telegram. They arrested him. They knew where he was going in France, and they picked him up. And they're requiring something different on Telegram. And this is the danger, though, of personality created portals for communication, is that they go after the leader or the leaders, and basically all of Telegram has been altered. We don't know what happened with it. We
Yeah,
don't know. We don't know if there's a
yeah,
back door, and we don't know that there's not a back door in Signal. Do you?
I don't.
That's why.
It's a scary thought, and this is one of the reasons. I mean, please take my word for it, but I, for my own purposes, would love to see encrypted messaging through StartMail, because I would be absolutely guaranteed, because I know the people and I know they wouldn't, so for me, and obviously for someone else, it's like Signal, Telegram, StartMail. I just don't know, but here I am on the inside going, please,
Well, it's
create
needed.
encrypted messaging.
It's needed desperately. I know also that Phil Zimmerman created a phone. I think it was called, what was it called? Black phone? No.
Oh, the dark.
Yeah, the dark.
phone?
It was some
Yeah,
type
you're
of
right.
encrypted phone. And then there was some changes between him and the partners, or
Black
yeah,
phone.
in the partners, and then he left the company and God knows what happened. But I really think it would be great if he could help StartMail set up the chat.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
We need
would
it.
be fantastic. By the way, his company was called Silent Circle.
I almost got killed walking across the street going into Geneva to try to meet with them to see if I could get more users using it around the world. I was that excited about it. And within months, it was disbanded. He did, his relationship was no longer with Silent Circle. I was very sad about it, because.
So I'm looking here just quickly on Wikipedia. Silent Circle is an encrypted communications firm based in Washington, D.C., providing multi-platform secure communication services for mobile devices and laptops. So,
but it's
presumably they are.
You know what?
Still doing
I lived in Europe for several years, and if you were living in Europe, where do you think the phone was shipped from? London. That's over for me. It's over. It's shipped from London, and now it's in D.C. Forget it. Just forget it.
Yeah, you just
forget it.
You just made me think of those pagers that were shipped.
Forget it. I mean, the whole thing is a wash for me. I'm not saying it doesn't have a use, but I wouldn't trust it now without him, So, but I really appreciate that you're back. I appreciate that StartMail is strong. And how do people reach you, Catherine?
So my website, I'm going to spell my name. It's Catherine-Albrecht.com. Somebody squatted on my previous address while I was out of commission, but Catherine-Albrecht, it's KATHERINE-ALBRECHT. I do a daily radio program. All of those are listed on there. There's a link to StartMail on there. I am also the author of a children's book on Revelation titled I Won't Take the Mark. I would love to come back on and talk about that at some point. My grandmother had warned me about the mark of the beast when I was 8 years old. And here I am all these decades later and saying, my goodness, it is possible to require a number to buy and sell. We do it every time we pay with a credit card or every time we use a frequent shopper card at the grocery store. And half of young people in a poll recently said that they would be willing to take an implant in their right hand if it meant that they would never lose their cell phone. So
maybe when
parents and grandparents need to learn, we need to warn our kids what the Bible had to say about these things that are coming true.
I'll tell you, when I do the segment on synthetic biology and molecular biology, maybe that's the time we do something. I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that people go and search StartMail, go to your site, and also come to it's rainmakingtime.com or .ch. We do a once-a-month special, and I will be back doing a weekly show. If I hear from more of you, I've asked for you to let us know. And we want to thank you so much, Catherine. It's Rainmaking Time.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm going to encourage people to get a 7-day free trial. You can check out StartMail, no risk, startmail.com. All right. Thank you.
Kim.